Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. My name is Melanie, and it's another Calling Creatives with Nikki from Nikki's Scrapbooking Adventure. Hi, Nikki.
Hey Melanie, how are you this morning?
I am doing great. We had a wonderful conversation over on Nikki's channel on Monday where we were talking about challenges with organizing our craft supplies. And I know you all have your set of challenges, so we'd love for you to go over there and check that out if you haven't already, and leave a comment on her video about what kind of challenges you face. But today we are going to talk about our journaling prompt from last month, where we were giving some suggestions of things that we could document regarding school as a general theme. It could be either related to yourself, to your kids, or anything that relates to school, I guess, right? So
Mhm.
I actually did a 12 by 12 layout this time. So last couple prompts I haven't. So I'm switching it up a little bit. What did you come up with?
So this is kind of relating to our previous conversation on Monday about organization problems, right? I couldn't find the specific paper that I wanted this morning.
Oh
I
no.
know. I had to go through Halloween papers, my black cardstock, and then my kit starter paper, and I finally found it in kit starter. So I was
Wow.
panicking. I was like, okay, I have a backup plan, but that's not the paper that I really want to use.
So I'm impressed that you had immediately you knew which paper you wanted to use. Like you just had it in your brain.
I did. Yep. And so I'm going to read my journaling.
Okay.
That is why we're here, right? So we can
Yeah.
get some examples. And then I'll show you the paper that I wanted to use.
Okay.
So, and my page is super simple. Like you'll see. As you grow up, you learn all sorts of vocabulary. To cement that information, you point out what you know. As we were driving home from Mimi's, there was a beautiful yellow crescent moon out the window. Instead of crescent moon, and I'm talking to my son in this, you identified it by saying Nana moon. In that instance, it definitely looked like a banana. It was so hard to correct you. And now, whenever I see that moon, all I can think of is Nana moon. So, of course, the background paper is moons.
Oh wow. Oh wow, that's
Uh,
perfect.
I know. So I searched for this piece of
Yeah.
paper because I knew I had it. It's one of my favorite papers, and this is Cartabella Halloween, I think was the collection. I need to go buy six of them because this is like my favorite.
Yeah.
It's just so pretty.
I was gonna say I actually thought it was from like a baby line. I guess the black background lends itself to the Halloween kind of nod.
Yep. So my backup paper was again another Halloween one, and it has a yellow crescent moon, but it also has bats. And I was like,
Okay.
my
Yeah.
this is a lot busier than this
Yeah.
one. And
Yeah.
this one really focuses in on the moon. So
Yeah.
this is what I was really searching for.
Now, are you going to add a
So
title or anything to this?
nope, it's going to be just this because I really do want the focus to be on the background paper.
So speaking of guys and stuff like that, I'm veering off topic here. Did you guys were you able to see the Northern Lights?
I saw a whole bunch of people post about it in my area. I went outside and I could not see it.
Oh, bummer.
Were you able to?
No, I don't think California was even kind of like even remotely a possibility. But I did take a photo the other night and I'm like, well, this is our sky. I can tell a story about that. Because I actually do have a very beautiful view out my dining room, living room window. I face west mostly, so I get a lot of fantastic sunsets that come in. But yeah, no northern lights, not for
Mm.
me. But I have seen them before, coming from Canada. But from the pictures I've seen, these were spectacular.
Yeah, it looked amazing, like pink in the sky. And I think I'm kind of in a too light polluted area too. Like I've got a street lamp like right in the corner of my
Right,
yard, and I've got trees all around. So it wasn't really possible to see.
right, right. Oh well. Anyways, well, I love the idea of just letting the cardstock to really be a focal part of your story. I think that's
Hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah, and I meant to take a picture of the moon, but cameras don't do justice
Yeah.
what the moon actually looks like. And in fact, it almost felt like it was kind of trying to make it a circle instead of a crescent.
Oh,
You know
okay.
how like the Google Pixel does that? I have an iPhone and it kind of felt like it was overlapping with the circle. And I was like,
Right.
I'm just gonna use the paper. And I
Yeah.
was thinking about finding a photo online, but I was like, the paper is gonna be perfect.
Yeah. What would be cute, not saying you have to do this, but if you took a picture of your son outside at night, just looking at the sky, doesn't even have to have the moon in there, but just him looking at it, that would be cute too.
So what about yours? What's your 12 by 12?
So this is the throwback. I think I alluded to this in our prompt thing that I was going to tell the story about a class I took in university. So I did not have any photos for this, so I went online and I looked up Mac computers circa 1990. And this is my layout. So this computer here is exactly the computer I used for this class in the computer labs way back in the day. I mean, the monitors were literally like this
Mm-hmm.
big, right? So that was kind of fun. Massive, like instantaneously, I remember being back in that computer lab. So I'm going to talk about the layout a little bit and then I'll read the journaling. So the title is How Could I Have Known? And this white piece of paper behind here, I made just by going on to the internet and looking up some basic programming language examples, and then I just put it in a Word document and printed it. It doesn't say anything specifically. It's more, it's not an actual program. It's more like how the program would be worded, the syntax of it. And
Mm-hmm.
because that features into the story. And then the paper collection is from Photoplay. And I really liked this cardstock, but it had laptops, which were not a thing. I'm that old. And there are a few of these little like Game Boy or like controller
Mm-hmm.
things, which really aren't. So I tried to minimize that as much as possible. But it is what it is. I don't think you're going to notice it too terribly bad in here. But that's what happens when
Mm-hmm.
you're documenting a story in 2024 that relates back to the early 1990s, right? So,
Yeah, I was just thinking like it's totally different when you went to college to now. It's
yeah,
completely different. People have laptops, they just put them in their bag.
yeah,
They have their laptops out on their desk during lectures,
right,
like
exactly,
no
exactly.
longer notebooks.
Yeah. And I was watching something the other day and they had like a transcribe program running while they were in class, like literally recording notes as the professor was speaking. So yeah, it was quite interesting. This particular collection had a few pieces that I thought I could make work. So one of them is this arrow here that says find your path. And then this one here says, find out who you are. And then this last one says, the best way to predict your future is to create it. And it's
Mm.
kind of tongue in cheek because this whole story is about me not liking this particular class and how I have ended up now being quite heavily involved in the area of computers or information technology. So I'm going to read the journaling and
Is it
yeah.
hidden on your page? Like, where is your journaling?
Oh, yes. I didn't even show that, right? So I create because you know me, I like to talk. Like seems like if you actually make me do the journaling, I like to write too, right? So it was too much to put on a page. Like there was no room. And I didn't
Hmm.
want to do a second page, which was the other option, right? Or even like a 6 by 12. So up here at the top is where my journaling is. And I specifically did that because, of course, this is going to go in a page protector. So I want it to be accessible. I also had this punch that kind of does like this notebook thing. And I did it along the edge of here, kind of as a nod to the dot matrix paper, where it had the
Hmm.
perforated, yeah, or just notebooks in general, because of course back then we didn't bring our computers to the classroom. But
Oh
anyways,
man, can you imagine like lugging those?
well, I never brought my textbooks to class or anything. I think I usually just brought a notebook. like,
Mhm.
and just did my notes, and then everything else I kept at home usually. Anyways, okay, so here's the journaling, which by the way, I used more cardstock from the collection. And on this side, it had this burgundy. And then on this one, it had all these little cute icons. So I put this purposely in the back because the journaling didn't go, so you could see some of it a little bit better. So as part of the requirements for my business degree, I had to take a computing science course that was an introduction to basic programming using Pascal. To say I was not excited about taking the class was an understatement. I had absolutely no interest in learning how to program and thought it was utterly ridiculous. While I understood and appreciated the advancements in computer technology and was excited to have access, this sounds so funny. I was excited to have access to a personal computer. Now it's a given, right? Like, who doesn't have a personal computer? I was excited to have access to a personal computer for my assignments. I didn't understand why we needed to learn to program. So as an aside note, I remember going to my parents and asking them if they would help me buy a computer for school, right? Like if we would chip in. And I think the computer at that point was $3,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very expensive. And we're talking like a monochrome monitor.
Right.
Like, yeah.
It was
Anyways.
new technology then, probably, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it was pretty new. Yeah. Okay, so I didn't understand why we needed them to program. Surely we would just purchase a program like Great Plains or Lotus 123, the precursor. Yeah, that's how old I am. With all the functionality needed available at our fingertips, right? Like, why do I need to program it? Someone much smarter than me is going to do the programming. I don't need to do this kind of thing, right? But there was no getting around it. It was a required class. So classes were spent trying to document the syntax just right. And I remember doing this so vividly in my notebook, taking down all the, writing down exactly how he had it phrased on the overhead projector, because of course that's what we did back then. So classes were spent trying to document the syntax just right so that when we worked on our assignments in the computer lab, we could make progress. One of the assignments was to write a basic program to track sales of some sort of widget. Again, surely I would just purchase a program that could do this and so much more. The Mac computers were small and all lined up on folding tables in what we called the computer lab. It was rudimentary at best and prone to issues like the computer blipping if someone accidentally bumped the table. You saved often for fear of losing hours of work, which is a lesson I learned the hard way. Yes, I'd spent 10 hours in the lab, hadn't saved often enough. Someone bumped the table, all the computers shut off, and we lost everything.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it wasn't like things were backing up on a cloud. There was no cloud. You were backing up on a floppy disk. And you didn't just back it up on one floppy disk. You backed it up on 3, because what happens if something happened to the floppy disk from one class to the next, right? Like, it was, yeah. I know, I'm really old. So I remember being incredibly frustrated because of a misplaced comma or a missing bracket. Seriously, I hated that class. And that literally was it. You would try to write programming, try to execute, wouldn't work. You'd missed someplace a comma, put an extra space in, something like that. Like, it just was incredibly frustrating. So as I mentioned, it was a required course, and the same professor, Professor Smiley, had taught the class for years. He had a reputation of being eccentric and fit the stereotypical computer geek to a T. He always wore an Argyle sweater to class, which never stayed on longer than 2 minutes, when he would make a big production of removing the sweater, followed by whipping out a comb to slick his hair back that constantly defied gravity.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah. A corny joke to start the lecture, and then it was transparency after transparency of programming lines. He also had an interesting approach to testing us on our knowledge. Besides actually creating programs in the computer lab, our midterm and finals were a combination of handwriting out program scenarios with no way to test if you had it all, if all your I's were dotted and T's crossed, or more importantly, commas and semicolons strategically placed, or multiple choice. To get around people guessing on the multiple choice, he had a way of scoring that he called right minus half wrong. If you guessed incorrectly, you would actually lose a half a point. So not that you would get 0, you would actually get negative 0.5 if you guessed wrong. Yeah. So if you didn't answer at all, you got nothing, but at least you didn't lose anything. It's so funny that almost 30 years later, he is the one professor whose name I recall and can vividly picture sitting in his class and working on the assignments. What I find even funnier is that I'm currently an IT director and work closely with programmers, developers, acting as the liaison often between users and the development team. While not programming, part of my job involves conceptually mapping out program changes and enhancements in addition to troubleshooting. Maybe some of those lessons from so long ago had more of an impact than I thought. Who would have guessed?
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's a good story. I'm glad you wrote that down.
Yeah.
Do you feel accomplished by writing it down?
I do. I think as I'm going through these, because these are older stories that I haven't documented, they hit in a different way because they stood the test of time. Do you know what I mean? Like, these stories have lived in my brain for 30 years. There must be a reason why they've lived in my brain for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes I find nowadays when I'm just scrapbooking generally, I document a little thing here and there, but I don't, if I didn't document, I probably wouldn't remember it. Which I'm not saying it's a bad thing to document because now you do remember it, but it's also like it wasn't significant enough that it cemented in your brain as being something core. Like it's not a core memory.
I tried to get it because, people are like, oh, you should totally write down anything your son says that's funny. And that's one of them. That was really funny. I was like, a nana moon? What in the world are you talking about, child?
Well, and those are types of stories that sometimes have a way of lasting longer, right? Because now it's always going to be called a nana moon. And then 15 years from now, someone's going to like, what the heck is a nana moon? And where did that come from, right?
Yes.
And you can say, oh, well, no, it all started because your dad, when he was 4 years old, thought the crescent moon looked like a banana. And it's just funny. Cute. It tells you something about your child too in a different way, about how he thinks and how he processes the world, right? I think it's great that you told that story.
And sorry, it wasn't really school related, but it was learning related. Like he's talking about vocabulary and what a crescent moon actually looks like. And
so for those of you that are playing along, we'd love to hear what stories you told this month or are planning to tell around this theme of school. We are going to have another prompt for you next month, so stay tuned for that. And I think that is going to be it for today. Again, make sure you check out Nikki's channel and have a go at the organization challenge video. I also have a playlist below of other conversations we've had in case you've missed those. Be sure to check that out. And until next time, happy crafting.